There is an old Swedish story, some 150 years old, that's told of a country doctor who came to a farmhouse one night to help deliver a child. And while the woman labored on the kitchen table, her husband assisted the doctor by holding a kerosene lamp. In due time, a fine baby boy was born. Then, much to the surprise of both parents, the doctor announced that a second child was arriving, a lovely daughter. The father was quite shaken by this unexpected turn of events, and so you can imagine his astonishment when he heard the doctor say, "Hang on, I think there's a third. I think we have triplets here." At this, the father began to back out of the room. The doctor hollered, "Hold it, come back here with that lamp." "No way," said the father, "it's the light that attracts them." It's the light that attracts them. Something of what our text this morning, and really this whole season, is all about. People guided by a light. Well, this is what I'd like to talk about today, our sense of direction. What is guiding us? This morning, as it is Epiphany Sunday, we look at the text that marks the day, namely the visit of the wise men. And it's a scene that deals with a variety of different issues. The gift of Christ, not simply for the people of Israel, but for the world at large. The great force of evil at work against the saving activity of God. And the various ways God works to reveal God's self. It's also a story about which there are almost as many questions as there are answers. Who were the wise men? Kings, holy men, astrologers, astronomers. Where did they come from? Persia? Arabia? What was this star? A comet? A supernova? We don't even know exactly how many wise men there were, the traditional number of 3 being taken only from the fact that 3 gifts were mentioned, but we don't actually know what number of them there were. There's a lot of issues, a lot of questions. But of course, in all this, what this story is basically about is some people with an extremely good sense of direction. I mean, think about it. In a whole world full of people unaware that God has just come into their midst in human form, these wise men were able to find him. Right? Out of a whole world, a little nobody in a little nowhere place. And this before the days of global positioning or Google Maps. I guess you could say that the wise men had the ultimate on-star system.
Nice.
This is exactly what I like to pick up on. You know, all the devices that we have nowadays to help us find our ways are popular because we all know having a good sense of direction is extremely helpful in life. In many cases, it's crucial. You know, it helps you to find your location. It keeps you from getting lost, perhaps dangerously lost. We've all experienced the difference between a good sense of direction and a bad one, right? It's like my dad. He's one of those people who can be driving in a completely unfamiliar place, make all sorts of twists and turns, but always remain perfectly aware of exactly what direction he's headed. It's spooky. He never gets lost. Well, conversely, of course, we all know that there are other people we know who they get lost walking through ShopRite.
Amen.
It's the power and the tremendous importance of a good sense of direction. And so this is what I'd like to consider today. As we start our journey into a new year, I'd like to think about developing a good sense of direction, really a spiritual sense of direction, that keeps leading us towards God's presence, power, and blessing, and not away. What I'd like to do is I'd like to look at the various characters in our drama this morning and compare and contrast their different senses of direction, what guides them, and how it goes. Our first character is Herod. As our scene today opens, the wise men arrive in Jerusalem. They have observed this new star, and as in many ancient religions, believing that every great occurrence on earth was marked by a sign in the heavens, they have correctly interpreted this sign to indicate the birth of a king. Apparently, however, they've either lost sight of this star or the ability to triangulate its exact location. But whatever their journey has brought them to the general region of Judea, and there they need some help. Of course, what makes them great, unlike most guys, they're willing to ask for a little help. Well, if you're in Judea and you're looking for a king, where do you go? You go to the capital city, right? To Herod. And note how Herod responds. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. Herod was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, we'll get back to the fear of the people in a moment, but why do you suppose was Herod frightened by this announcement from these foreign dignitaries? Well, obviously because what they proclaimed was the presence of an opponent to his rule, right? There's another king out there now, right? Herod correctly understands this as a threat to his power and his authority, and this is the worst possible thing that he can imagine. From what we know about King Herod, he was a cruel, ruthless, vindictive, frequently paranoid ruler. He was often given to acts of extreme violence, particularly against those he saw as threatening his position. He even had a number of his own sons killed for this very reason, thus creating the ancient proverb, "It is better to be Herod's pig than his son." In keeping with this, notice what his first act is in hearing of the presence of another king. Under the guise of wanting to find a new king so that he may honor him, Herod ultimately wants the baby sought out so that he can kill him. His failed attempts at this being what make up the whole rest of the chapter. In all of this, though, notice what Herod's driving motivation is, what alone guides him. It's self. Right? Self-interest, self-preservation, self-involvement, self. This is his sole sense of direction, and this we see ultimately does him in, leads him far away from God, gets him completely lost. And this is the first thing I believe the text wants to ask of us here. Are we also too much guided by self? Constantly consumed only with our thoughts and our issues and our problems and our perspective on things, our interests, right? Is this what it's all about for us? Where and how do we need to put ourselves a little more aside than we have been because it's getting our lives going in the wrong direction? Do you happen to recall the news item from some years ago about an automobile accident in Colorado? A car had driven into the back of a flatbed truck carrying metal tubing. And a piece of pipe had gone through the windshield of the car, pinning a woman in the wreckage. At the accident scene, many people tried to use their CB radios to get help. This was before cell phones. Trying to use their CB radios, but this one trucker continued to tie up the CB channel, frustrating their efforts. No matter how much the people begged him, he refused to cooperate. Finally, the trucker came upon the scene of the accident, whereupon he discovered that the critically injured woman was his own wife. When the doctor did arrive, he said that if he had been notified just 5 minutes earlier, the woman probably would have lived. See, it's a tremendously destructive force of self-involvement, right? Self-centeredness. Oscar Wilde once said, "A bore is a person who spends so much time talking about themselves that they don't have time to listen to you talk about yourself." It's the first destructive, dangerous sense of direction, being guided only by self. Our second character then, it's the people of Jerusalem. As mentioned, the people of Jerusalem, along with Herod, were also frightened by the birth announcement of a new king. Once again, the question is, why? Particularly in the people's case, right? Why be upset with the possibility of a new king? I mean, Herod is terrible, right? You'd think the people would be overjoyed at getting rid of him. But they're not. They're terrified, it says. Why? Well, in the people's case, the problem seems to be obviously not one of a loss of power, of which they have none, but rather a fear of a loss of stability. That is, King Herod is horrible, right? But at least he's a known quantity, right? I mean, what will this new king be like? What sort of horrible things are going to take place with him? Or maybe as Herod battles him. Are things going to be better or worse if he gets into power? Much like all of us, quite often, the people of Jerusalem would rather take a lousy known over a possibly better unknown. This is their driving motivation. What guides them is stability. Maintaining the status quo, not having anything disrupted. And once again, we see a sense of direction that leads them far astray from the life that God wants for them. Second question then that this asks of all of us. How often are we likewise guided too much by stability, by a desire never to have our lives disrupted in any way, our beliefs ever challenged, our world upset, never to be ill at ease, disturbed, or uncomfortable, or at risk? There's an old proverb that says, following the path of least resistance makes both rivers and people crooked. Are we always taking only the path of least resistance through life? And what's that doing to us? Where do we need some challenge and difficulty and risk? How might God be calling us to this, but we're resisting it? We just want things left alone, easy and comfortable and known. I remember once seeing this television program, one of those, kids say the darndest things kind of shows, where this little boy was being asked if he had any pets. And he replied, well, I used to have some goldfish, but some water softener got into the aquarium, and they kind of softened to death.
Oh.
Sadly, this is exactly what so often happens to us. We kind of soften to death. It has been said, life is like flying a kite. Only contrary wind pushes it higher. Where is the Spirit of God trying to carry us higher by a contrary wind? To think a new thought, to challenge an old belief, to risk maybe some new ministry in our lives, to not have our faith be quite so settled and comfortable. Simply put, where does God need us to be uncomfortable this year? Second, dangerous sense of direction, being guided by stability. Which leads us into our third character, the chief priests and the scribes. Having arrived in the general vicinity of the newborn king, the wise men, they need some help to pin down the exact location, And so Herod goes to the religious authorities and asks them, where the king of the Jews, the Christ, the Messiah, is supposed to be born. And the answer is obvious. Any learned person of the time knows it. The Messiah is to be born in Bethlehem. The priests and the scribes, they quote the exact biblical text. Very curious thing about this, however. Having just quoted the prophecy, and having just heard that it has been fulfilled, isn't it interesting that none of the religious leaders bother to check it out? You'd think they would, wouldn't you? I mean, maybe they don't put much stock in these foreign dignitaries, they're these foreigners' theories here, but you'd figure that some of the religious leaders would go around and check it out. At least one of them, right? On the outside chance that it just might be true. I mean, it's only a few miles away. Yet the wise men pick up no new traveling companions in Jerusalem. And this, I believe, demonstrates a key characteristic of this third group. What drives the chief priests and the scribes, what guides them, is apathy, a complacency, really a disengagement with life. That is, they have all their faith in God, all their knowledge and understanding of God's wills and ways, but they don't do anything with it. It never engages with real life. It doesn't take any tangible form. It isn't put into action. It doesn't do anything. The third question that this text seeks to ask of each of us, once again, how are we the same? How often are we guided by a disengagement, by a faith that's just a head thing, but rarely, if ever, takes any real form where it needs to? In fact, we often try to avoid making it take a real form. To put it another way, what did our faith do this past week? What did your faith do this past week? Did it actually do anything in the world and the lives of those around you? Will it do anything in the week ahead? This is what it all really comes down to. One tiny piece of faith actually acted upon is worth 1,000,000 pieces of faith just believed. One author writes, I was almost your person today, Lord. I almost put my faith into action. I almost did something that I believed in that you wanted me to do. I was almost your person today, Lord. Then I thought what it would have been like if Jesus had done the same thing. What if God had almost revealed himself in Christ? What if Christ had almost been born, and almost lived, and almost died, and almost rose again? What if he had said, ask and it will almost be given to you. Seek and you will almost find. Knock and it will almost be opened to you. What if he had said, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will almost give you rest? What if he had said, I am almost always with you? My almost Christianity suddenly took on a much different light. I realized how many times I had only played the games of being one of Jesus' almost disciples. I recalled how many times I had believed but not done, believing that close was good enough. But in the end, it is not a question of theology, it is a question of living. Whether or not in the end I would simply, finally, just walk the walk of Jesus Christ. I remember once reading that in the Old West, when you took a stagecoach trip, there were 3 different types of tickets you could purchase. Obviously, first class, second class, and third class. And the difference between the 3 tickets was this. If you had a first class ticket, and the stage had trouble, as it invariably did, getting stuck in the mud or breaking a wheel or something, you could just stay in the coach while it was fixed. If you had a second class ticket, however, when the stage had trouble, you had to get out. But still, you didn't have to do anything to help. If you had a third-class ticket, though, when the stage had trouble, you not only had to get out, but you also had to help fix the problem. You had to push the coach through the mud. You had to hold the thing up while a wheel was fixed. The point? Well, that many Christians today, as all of us from time to time, think we have got first-class tickets to the kingdom. Right? Not realizing that Jesus only hands out third-class tickets. Right? That's the only ticket that really gets you anywhere. What kind of tickets have we purchased, and what is it doing to us every single day? Third, wrongful, destructive sense of direction is guided by disengagement, a faith not put into action when it really counts. What will our faith do this week? All of which brings us to, finally, our fourth and at last admirable characters, the wise men. After all of the, what not to do, we finally get a little bit of what to do. What is the primary motivation of the wise men, besides just to find a newborn king of the Jews? Well, it's stated at the outset and at the close of the text. It's kind of like bookends to it. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem and Judea, the wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to worship him." And then, when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They bowed down and worshipped him. This is finally their driving motivation, what ultimately guides the wise men, not simply the star, which simply serves as just one of the many tools in all of this, but rather it is the desire to worship the newborn King of the Jews, to worship Jesus Christ. This is what drives them. It's worship. And this, I believe, is the final point of the text to us. That this is the final component in the lives of those who have a truly good sense of direction in life. They're guided by the desire to have their lives be a living worship of God. They're guided by worship, you see. Now, what does this mean in a practical sense? Well, note the two things that it meant for the wise men. First, it meant bowing down. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Worship first means bowing down. That is, once again, humbling oneself, it's one's sense of self before the Lord. But even more in this, putting oneself entirely at God's command. Surrendering, submitting oneself to God. And how things are going to go is the way God wants them to go, not the way I want them to go. And then secondly, this worship then also entails a costly giving. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, the familiar three gifts. It's important to note that in that day and age, these were some of the very best things that a person could possibly give, extremely costly gifts. In fact, if you think about it, the whole trip, just to get there and to offer these gifts, was outrageously expensive.
Amen.
And this is the final point that I would have us draw out of this text. That the wise men were guided by desire to worship Christ, finally realized in very costly giving. And it is with this costly discipleship that finally found their way to God, right? Does this describe our discipleship? There's an old legend that says that there were actually originally 4 wise men. It's just that the 4th one's gift was a fruitcake, so he was thrown out. My apologies to all people who make good fruitcakes. But it's lousy giving, you see. And such giving misses the point. In giving to God, it's got to be our very best, right? How often do we try to get away with giving God a little something less than our best, right? You see, it's got to be costly. And I don't mean monetarily. I mean in the cost to one's actual life. How does our faith in Christ cost us nothing? Think about how often in the week you can believe in Jesus Christ, it doesn't cost you anything, right? This is the final question for us all in this. Has our faith in Christ cost us anything recently? What's our cost? One author writes, a man was packing a shipment of food contributed by a local school for the poor people of Appalachia. He was separating beans from powdered milk and canned vegetables from canned meats. Reaching into a box filled with various cans, he pulled out a little brown paper sack. Apparently, one of the children had contributed something different from the items suggested on the list. Out of the bag fell a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a cookie. Crayoned in large letters was a little girl's name, Christy, room 104. This girl had apparently been so moved by the appeal that she had just instantly given her own lunch for someone else. The giving, it really costs us something, right? It has some tangible impact on us. Only this is the real worship of the one who gave his all for us. And only this yields the great sense of direction that finally finds him, right? A poet once penned the following sarcastic but far too real words. He wrote, "I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or to disturb my sleep, but just enough to equal a cup of warm milk for an afternoon nap. I don't want enough to make me love a person of a different color, or to have to bend down and pick vegetables with a migrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want the warmth of the womb, not a new birth. I would want a pound of eternal in a brown sack. I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please. How much of God do you want?" Final component in great sense of direction, guided by worship, bowing down in costly giving. How is your sense of direction? Billy Graham once told the story of a time early in his ministry when he arrived in a small town to preach a sermon. And wanting to go and mail a letter first, he asked the young boy where the post office was. When the boy told him, Dr. Graham thanked him and said, "If you'll come to the Baptist church this evening, you can hear me tell everyone how to get to heaven." "I don't think I'll be there," replied the boy. "After all, you don't even know your way to the post office." It is vital to have a good sense of direction. How's yours? As we start our way into this new year, what is going to guide us? Self, stability, disengagement, or the worship of Jesus Christ our Savior? Let us prepare to celebrate the sacrament of our Lord.